Let's get the read from the Kingsview Asset Management CIO, Scott Martin, and Expert Press CEO, Dave Maney. Now, first, Dave, I want to get to you, and I want to start with the Dow today. The chart looks like the Incredicoaster from the California Adventure. What's going on? Started off high, down, and now we're edging back up again.
Well, I think there's a lot of mixed signals out there, Edward. You know, I don't know any other way to look at it. I mean, you have so much uncertainty on so many fronts, but maybe not as much as the market felt last week. It seems to me that I think we've had our answer on rates, which is they're not going to go down anytime soon. We're having this kind of preview of AI as the driver in the markets. And then I think people are maybe wrongly questioning whether that driver will extend across other companies other than just the suppliers to the gold rush.
Well, Scott, I want to get your take on this. Go back to the Magnificent Seven now. There's been so much investment in that AI that Dave mentioned, so much investment in other technology upgrades. Do you think the earnings report now needs to show those results, needs to show that the investment pays off, or will the company's stock be punished if it doesn't?
Yes, some. I think, Edward, it's going to have to start showing that that's coming to fruition. Like Dave said, it's just not this hope upon hope that everything's going to work out via AI and we just leave it alone. And so, listen, I love myself a good roller coaster, one being the fish shows at the Sphere in Las Vegas this weekend and living to tell about it today, which is the fact that there are hope in this, like, kind of these sell-offs. There's hope in the fact that the market's freaking out about rates. There's hope in the fact that some of these companies like NVIDIA, like CRM, and some of those guys out there, Amazon on Friday, Edward, fall 5-10%. Because that gets out the weak hands in the market. So these companies that are coming down the line here this week and next in tech that are going to report earnings, and I think the earnings are going to be pretty good, the weak hands are going to be out of those stocks, ladies and gentlemen. So the strong hands are going to come in off the sidelines and pick these stocks up when they pull back.
So, Dave, do you think then there's more room for the Magnificent Seven, even at the values where they are right now?
You know, it's hard to say. And I also find when I take a look at them, I think that their categorization together doesn't hold up to kind of the examination that I think it does. They're companies from very different eras. They're companies founded to do very different things. Some of them compete directly with each other. Some of them don't. Some of them are dependent on each other for sales. And I find that group, I get it. There's 7 incredibly dynamic American companies, but I'm not sure the grouping makes sense. And the other really interesting thing about this trade of this kind of magnificent, or the AI trade, is that if you believe in those Magnificent Seven stocks, of which several have big stakes in the AI game, you almost have to believe in the kind of the coming earnings story for others, because the AI is not powerful unless it pulls out big pieces of costs, gives big pieces of optimization, right? And that means increased earnings. So if the market could be all wrong on the AI bet, and if not, I don't think it's given enough credit to other companies and what's likely to happen to earnings there.
Yeah, I'm sure investors do not hope that they are all wrong, because that green would turn to red quickly. Scott, how much of the stock price do you think for the Magnificent Seven rests what the Federal Reserve is doing? Because money is king, what they will do next week, and then what it signals in the meeting, in the news conference next week.
In theory, Edward, a lot. Now, in reality, I think very little, to be honest with you. And I've been saying this to Neil and yourself most of the year in the last 6 months. If the Fed does nothing, if they don't cut rates, if they certainly don't hike rates, we're going to be fine, boys and girls. The problem is the market has gotten, as you noted there in your question, so used to this easy money and all these rate cuts that were never going to come. And so it got hyped on that. And now we have to get back to this reality that rates can just be flat here. And it's not higher for longer. It's normal for longer is where rates should be right now. And so as long as the market gets up to speed with that, which could take the rest of this quarter up until the end of June, I think that's when you really got to come in with 2 hands and buy the rest of this tech market.
Yeah, and so, Scott, I wanted to ask you about, again, following up on that a little bit. We're hearing maybe we had a pullback, last week, maybe a 10% pullback coming at some point. Do you think that we could see that pullback? Is there another pullback in big tech, and would it be a buying opportunity in tech?
I'm sure there is, and 100%. And we forget as investors and as kind of the common man or woman that, like, we have these periods in the market every year practically. And if we don't have one, it's kind of weird. So when you have a 10% pullback, maybe a 15% pullback in, say, tech, 10% in the S&P, you've got to walk into this market and then jump into the water and start buying the stocks that you like.
Yeah. So, Dave, when you talk about this Magnificent Seven, are we looking at a scenario possibly where we could get to a too big to fail? We heard about the banks, or even too big with the influence they have over our lives. Could that be a situation in the future?
The second one for sure, the too big and too much influence. One of the things that this AI wave drives is massive scale. It suggests it's a game you can only play at massive scale, and it ends up triggering subsidiary effects in other companies of scale. And so if you don't like big business and big corporations, you're really not going to like what this AI wave is going to drive. And my guess is that that's an area where you could see the FTC maybe finally start to win a few cases, is if it began to pursue what's coming down the pike over the next 2 or 3 years.
Scott, I want to turn to Tesla, specific stock here, and I want you to talk to me about Tesla. We've seen a huge pushback against Tesla this year. Is that the EV demand finally coming to roost? Would you bet against this, or do you think this is going to turn around as Elon Musk has again and again over the past decade beat the naysayers?
He really has. He's come out of some dark places, and I think he will do it again. The EV turn, let's say, publicly, Edward, is behind, I think, the stock price there. And the fact, too, that maybe some other companies have caught up, but Tesla is still the number one in the U.S., number one worldwide, in my opinion, if you're looking at EVs. And AI, too, to Dave's point. I mean, you want to talk about big business and AI. I mean, Tesla's going to be a big part of that, where you almost have like a kit-type car. If people remember Knight Rider and Michael Knight and David Hasselhoff, that's... Yes, worth buying, absolutely. But let it fall a little bit more. I think it's still going to get some more weak hands out of there, and then this thing jumps later in the year once the EV stuff starts to resurge.
And Scott, Dave, I got to leave it there. Thank you very much. I appreciate all of the insight on this, a debate that will continue.